morning, everybody, and welcome to this leadership episode of 30 Minutes to President's Club. My name is Armand Farouk, and I'm here with my co-host, Mark Kosklo. And today, we have Kelvin Sims. He is a senior sales manager at Vitally.io, and this is one of the most actionable episodes we have ever had on figuring out how to use referrals and identify referral opportunities for your reps so that they can proactively accelerate deals or get into opportunities that they normally would not have gotten into. Mark, why should people listen?
Yeah, I agree with you, Armand. I think that this episode, more than any, was one where if you hit the pause button twice during the episode, after the first 10, 15 minutes, after the next 10 minutes, and at the very end, you will walk away, if you take some notes, with 3 things that you could start doing next week.
Alrighty, Kelvin, welcome to the show. We start every show with your top 3 actionable leadership takeaways. Let's get your 3.
Yeah, so first one, Monday deal bright spots. I think as a manager, you need to help your reps find good opportunities with their early stage deals. And basically, to start off the week, you should go in, understand, and export all new discos that are happening that week for your team. You can do that directly from your CRM, HubSpot, or Salesforce and upload that list directly into LinkedIn. From there, what you want to look at quickly is who are you personally connected with? Who's your executive leadership team connected with? Your investors and your portco relationships. And then you can also cross query that and understand any former customers that are also now at those accounts. What you want to do with this information is bring this to the rep immediately so they can prep for that call. And you're doing one of 2 things, really. You're giving them an opportunity to build rapport and see if we have a mutual connection that we can chat about freely, or also identify a key stakeholder that might not be yet in the evaluation that has been a former user or has a great relationship with somebody at your team to get you a step above the competition.
Boom. What's number 2?
Number 2, Friday best practices. This is kind of your weekly recap. So much noise in Slack or whatever your communication channel is internally. And we're in a remote world, right? Reps miss key information that's being shared daily. What you want to do at the end of the week, and Friday's the best day because usually it's a very light lift day for most people. You want to bring in all of the key wins and learnings from your team in a Slack channel, a Notion page, and share that directly with them. What you can do simply is just scan through your Slack channel, understand what calls were shared, what tips were shared, new content or blogs that came from the marketing team, and put it in a very easy library for them. You could also do this directly in Gong and have those calls automatically upload into a sales folder and do this based off of easy filtering. So deals that have won, demos that have happened, recent competitor mentions, and just make it very easy for your team to find.
I love those buckets you mapped out, dude. What's number 3?
Number 3, win between calls. What you want to be able to teach your reps how to do properly is make sure that they are doing the small things in between calls, right? You don't win each deal just on the calls you have with your prospects. You have to win in the trenches. What you want to do with them is show them how they can understand where they can add value in multiple facets. This could be something as simple as just agenda setting after calls or before a call is to happen. This could be executive touches after that first disco happens, where you're just letting the key stakeholder know exactly who you met with, what challenges you're solving for, and where you guys are going next. But more importantly, what you can start to use is your call recording to understand, what questions were asked from people on the team, and then follow up individually with them to close the loop on any open ends, but also to give them additional insight and value that you might not have covered on that initial call.
There's a couple of things where I'm almost like, I've never done that before. And the first one I want to talk about is this sales nav thing. So I just want to get kind of like the logistics straight of it. So you kind of scan every meeting that's been going to hold next week. And then what you do is you take that list, and does each rep or does your operations department, like who puts that in Sales Nav? And what does the format of that output look like? Is it a Slack? Is it a document? Take me through the nuts and bolts of that.
Based off of how you have things structured in your CRM, this might be discos that are held this week, or you can do it by date. We have it by field. So I look at all discovery calls and I just look a week out. I have a small team of 5 reps. So I can look at those 25 accounts, and basically I just export it from our HubSpot instance into a CSV. And then what you need to do for LinkedIn is essentially have 2 key components. You need the account name and the URL for the website to match. Once that's loaded in, now you have all of your new discovery calls in LinkedIn as an account list. Title it something you're not going to forget. Just simple date. The next piece you want to do is then start to use the filtering in Sales Nav. So you'll see there's a connections of, and those are direct connections for you. And then connections of is where you can start to insert key people at your company. I sell a customer success platform at Vitally. I want to know anybody from our CS leadership that is connected with individuals at my prospect, because that is the number one stakeholder I want them in front of. And then outside of that, I start to look at our co-founders, our portco, so any strong investors we have. And then the other part I mentioned was former customers. The same way you would go about exporting your open opportunities or your new deals, you would run a same report for current customers. So you probably have a field in your CRM that indicates somebody's a customer. Run that entire list and then upload that into LinkedIn. Same format, company name, URL. And then what you can do is say, hey, current company equals my new discos, and run that against past customer or past company equals the new customer account list I just uploaded. What you're going to get, similar to what UserGems provides, is a running list of all connections that are at the company of the new disco that were formerly at a current customer of yours. The secret here is you add one more filter that says recently changed jobs and then has been at the company less than a year. And now you're getting to the key decision maker or key people that have been at the company for less than a year, now at a new company. And then you can add other filters on top. You can look at stakeholder values. So you can look at executives, VP, director, C-level. You can look at functions. Are they in customer success? Are they in sales, marketing? Can get pretty finite depending on how massive that list is, and really narrow down your search based off of what filters make the most sense.
So to recap that, you're saying my team has 25 discovery calls this week. You export those into a spreadsheet. You pipe that spreadsheet into Sales Nav. And then you say, okay, Sales Nav, show me anyone who is connected to these 25 accounts, where a connection means you're connected to our CS leadership team, you're connected to our co-founders, you're connected to our investors, you're connected to a past customer, for example. Or maybe you've even come from a past customer, right?
Exactly.
Why is this something that you take on personally and you do every single week versus having your reps do this and just giving them the list of the filters that they need to apply?
It's twofold. It's something that you want to teach your team to do, because this isn't something that is going to be scalable long-term or as your team expands. That being said, I personally want to know who I am connected with, because that gives me the ability to also join a deal early on. Or sometimes you might see that reps don't feel as confident going to leadership to ask for a connection. I want to be able to alert them to say, hey, help me help you understand how we can get in front of this person. They're connected with our SVP of CS. They're connected with our co-founder, investor. What do you need from me to get this connection available, and see if we can make a warm introduction? But the key here is you really want to teach your team how to do this on a weekly basis. I personally just don't want to find myself in the position where we are in the third stage of a deal and we just realized that an executive is connected with our board. I want to make sure we're getting that from the jump. It's more of a protection plan to make sure I'm not missing anything too late.
So let's say that you do one of these and you find out your meeting on Monday has a couple connections. Is it just FYI, just so you're aware? Are you leveraging that in the conversation or the meeting somehow? Like, how are you coaching a rep to use this information that you're giving to them?
First step is let's talk to who they're connected with. Let's take the terms of this is somebody internally that has the relationship. We're opening up a quick Slack and saying, hey, just saw you're connected with this person. How good is your relationship? Would you be able to make an intro if we need? And based off of that response, I know what play I need to use. If it's a very good relationship, this is something that I'm going to tell the executive. We're going to have the call. We'll mention you. But after that, we're going to ghostwrite a note for you to send directly to your contact just to give a little bit more praise. If it's a looser relationship, it might be just more of a rapport opportunity. I was actually listening to Sam McKenna talk about how she operates in this regard. And she says, you never know how somebody feels about the other person. So don't assume that they are liked by that person. She gave the example of saying, hey, I saw we were both connected with X individual. How do you know them? And that gives them the opportunity to open up and chat, because you really never know what that experience with them is like prior to. But yeah, I think the main thing is open up the thread immediately, understand what the relationship is, get that information to the rep, and understand, is this a rapport opportunity, something we can open up the call with outside of weather and where you're located, something fun and new that they're probably not expecting? Or is this something that we can use right at the tail end of that discovery to make a warm introduction to the key stakeholders?
You mentioned something in passing that if you catch something interesting, you might be like, I'm going to jump in on that deal. How do you decide which deals you're going to jump in on versus which deals you're going to cover in pipeline reviews or gone reviews?
I think you want to look at what's the quality of the deal. Is this an ICP fit? Is this somebody that might not look good on surface? How good is that relationship? I know LinkedIn is a great channel for executives, for people that are busy. When I see a connection with somebody that I am very tight with, I'm immediately sending them a LinkedIn message saying, hey, just caught wind my reps meeting with your team. Do you have a few minutes to chat? I want to kind of jump in immediately to see if I can get any insights. If I see this as a good deal, if I understand they came in, demo request, they might have given us some information that they're in a true evaluation. Those are also calls I'm saying, hey, bring me in. I want to join this. I know a couple people over there. And when I introduce myself, I'm going to name drop some people and just create that like confidence and the warm and fuzzies, if you will, with the prospects. I say, okay, maybe this person knows a couple people over here. They can be validated. I'm going to have that conversation with them. I think the one thing you want to also consider, right, is, and we might get to this later in the show, is like you want to use references through your sales process. And I think so many people do so much of the research before they talk to a sales rep that if you can start to bridge the gap into those references for them, and this is where the current or the former customers really come into play, you are potentially creating a landslide momentum for your product without even demoing them, right? On that first call, you could say, hey, I noticed you're actually connected with Ben from Sales Message, who was a customer of ours. Don't know if you've caught up with them on how they're using Vitally there. If they are really close, they're going to have that conversation with Ben directly. And if Ben is a true advocate, he's going to sing your praises. One thing I will caution you with is with former customers, always check the health and status of that account, right? We don't want to send people to customers that might be in risk situations or not healthy or happy. And so just double check, hey, are they using the product? Are they happy? Are they somebody that looks like an advocate? Or maybe in a sticky scenario, maybe this is something I hold on to until maybe the timing's better.
I really like this technique, the way that you're using it, which is different than I've thought of using it, which is we have worked hard to get these meetings this week, y'all. Like, let's make sure that we're really prepared from a networking standpoint to take them. I know at Outreach, one of our best plays for probably 2 or 3 years was we had a saved Boolean search. So we had a LMS document. You go into Seismic and it'd be like prospecting ideas. One of them was called like X outreach customers at new companies. And we had a little Boolean search that you could put inside Sales Nav, and we'd have reps copy, paste that in with their account list, and we would get everybody out of the 10 accounts they're going after that quarter who was a former user at a super happy, awesome, big outreach customer. And then we would go do the whole bottoms up thing by like, hey, I bet your job sucks without outreach. That's literally the email we would send. And people would be like, oh my God, I need outreach in here so bad. And we'd be like, all right, well, here's some other people we see. Like, let's form a little tribe and see what we can do here. And that was a huge prospecting play for us on the AE side. It was so simple to do. The magic you can do in Sales Nav is pretty crazy.
And it's only gotten better over the years. It was a tool that not going to say I neglected for a bit, but once I started to see some more of the updates there, it really started to resonate with me. And once you can show this to a rep and then they do it in the wild and they get a win, that's where you see adoption across the floor. And I'm going to steal that, Mark, the quick, hey, your job must suck without X, because honestly, I think that is exactly the messaging. Like people that don't have a tool that they just use so passionately are probably back in the challenges that it was solving for. To your point about finding your power users, yes, if you have an NPS tool, go after your top advocates. You can do a full customer list, but you can also bring that customer list down to just focus on people that have given you a high NPS score over the last 90 days, people that are case studies, content, posts, and really focus on your loudest fans. They're going to sing your praises, and that's exactly who I want to get in front of immediately.
I know there are probably people in the audience who are like, oh no, this means now I need to export all my discovery calls every week into a spreadsheet. This sounds like a lot of work. The answer is yeah, it is work. If you've got 25 discovery calls this week, and if you assume all those either came cold outbound or inbound without a referral, if you can flip 3 of those a week to warm referrals because someone that knows them, literally at some companies, referrals close at double the win rate versus outbound or traditional inbound. And I remember anytime we had an opportunity to get an investor intro before reaching out to a company, literally that was like 10 out of 10 times going to be a way warmer conversation, a far more likely discovery call because we were de-risked. I've made the mistake in the past in my sales process where I've told my reps, no references until verbal commit. I don't want to talk to CS and have them talk to everyone wants a reference early in the process. And over multiple podcast recordings, I've started to soften my old man position on this because I've realized that references can change the perception at the beginning of a sales cycle. Could you give an example or a story of how you would instruct a rep to use a reference early in a sales cycle, making sure that you're not just like wasting all your customers' time?
I think you need to really understand for the listeners how many customers you have, how many references are at your disposal, because this isn't a source you want to over tap into for unqualified deals or deals that are really not even close to being closed. We come from a very competitive space, and sometimes the people that can make the biggest impact first are going to win people over to get them to the demo, get them into the trial, and really focus in on your product. What you want to understand is, would this person be successful, all things considered? Do they have the right tech stack? Do they have an organization that is built out in customer success or whatever your industry is? Do they have the right leadership? Do they have a problem we can solve for it? Like, all things considered, if all those are yes, I feel a little bit better. If those things aren't true, I don't want to jump into a reference, and I do want to qualify them a bit to really understand where they're at. But let's talk about the scenario where all things are true. If you know that this is competitive, this is something that I want to offer up after the demo and after I've been able to realize and show value with them. I don't want to do it before the demo unless there is a connection that they have with a customer of ours. If this is completely cold, I want to wait till after the demo, after I validated a few things. And I do want to recommend it for these good quality leads as a step of our process. Hey, this is typically what we do. We know there's a lot of people you're looking at. Before we get into a trial, like generally we'd want to get you connected with somebody. You mentioned you had problem or concerns with how quickly is this going to get stood up, or is this going to work for my industry? Are my customers going to engage with this new tactic? Based off the information they give you, that's where you can start to say, hey, I got a customer in mind that I want to get you connected with. What is your availability, or is that something your team's going to be interested in? And then this also gives you another avenue for a reason for them to reach out. If you ever find yourself where you're being ghosted, this is a good area for you to say, hey, customer X just said they want to connect with you. Is your team still open to chatting with them, right? It's better than just that generic, hey, any update on this email? And you can use that reference as a guide to get a deal back on track.
To me, there's two types of reference calls, proactive and reactive. And what most people think about when a reference call is reactive, hey, somebody's asking for a reference call, I need to have people ready. That's definitely the type that you're saying, Kelvin. Don't overtax them. If you set somebody up to do 3 or 4 calls a week for you, do they work for you or do they work for their company? It's kind of crazy, really. There's a different kind of reference that I found super great in the very early part of the sales cycle, and that's called a proactive reference. We would go find like 4 or 5 people that were advocates, and we'd say, listen, let's have an agreement together. We're going to send you $100 for every referral. And we're going to send you a lot more referrals than we normally would. We give them some kind of skin in the game. And then we would hammer them like after the first or second meeting. And we would proactively say, hey, listen, we have such great users. We actually have people that do references early in the sales cycle when you don't really know what you're doing and what you're thinking about and stuff, but they're still really great. Like, let me introduce you to this person, versus that reactive one at the end of the sales cycle where they have like specific questions now that they're very educated. So it's 2 different kinds of calls. If you're really in an area like we were, Kelvin, in that CS world where that networking is so tight and everybody knows everybody and word of mouth is so important, arming those proactive reference people, identifying a handful of those, telling them this is what that means, maybe multiple calls a week. If they agree to it, then you're all in, and you can do something to thank them for that. That doesn't make them feel like they're muddying their opinion. You know what I mean?
You also bring up a really good point. If you don't have a reference program and you're building it out, or you do have one and you want to make sure it really is top line, make sure there is an incentive at the end of the day for the customer. And you don't want to your point, like over incentivize where it feels like they might be disingenuous or giving false narratives, but you really need to make sure they feel appreciated, feel heard. We also gift after somebody takes a reference, but I think the most important thing that I try and do when I am giving that follow-up incentive is saying, I really appreciate you and everything you're doing for us. please let me know if there's anything I can do on your end. I'm a sales leader, even extending that to say, if your team needs help on the sales side, how to use Gong, XYZ, making sure that they can get something from me as well, because they are helping me and my team. And I want to return the favor for anything that they need, whether that's helping them out with their current instance, helping them tackle some challenges. Make sure you are also giving back, because these are going to be the people that really see you as a partner, and they're not going to be scared whenever they see your name pop up in their inbox asking for another reference.
We've got a couple ideas on how to identify the hot discovery calls where we have an in, how to use proactive references. The only other place that we haven't talked about is proactive referrals into these prospects. So I'm curious for you, I've seen teams do executive sourcing jams. I've seen once a quarter you go to your investor, you ask them to introduce you to all their portfolio companies. Are there other ways that come to mind that you've helped your team source pipeline and get in front of customers that they might not be able to get in front of on their own?
We've talked about open opportunities. We can open this up to target accounts, people that you're outbounding to. If you do this more on a monthly basis, really this is all about bucketing and prioritizing. So what I would recommend is maybe you take a look and have your reps go through this process of bringing in their territory, 150 accounts, bring that into LinkedIn and start with the key stakeholders, the key investors. Say I start with my CEO, anybody that's connected with Jamie. What I want to do is get a running list. The last thing I want to do is ping Jamie 8 different times throughout that week on these different connections. So let me get the list boiled down. Let me see who he knows the most, who he knows the least, and then let me start to go down my track with the SVPs, the other leaders in the space, my investors. You're going to see accounts and deals pop up over and over. Those are the ones we're bucketing, and those are the ones we're focused on first, because those are the most warm intros we have. Everything else that has a very loose connection or very weak bright spot, those are the ones we're going to put to the back burner until we have time back in our day. Force your team to say, hey, I got a new month coming up on Monday, right? It's February. I want to look at all of my pipeline that's open. I'm going to run a report on that. And then I'm going to do the same for all my target accounts. I'm going to bucket these individuals, and then I'm going to shoot the connections I have internally, a list of people that they're connected with, and get a status quo of how well they're connected to then prioritize how I go about reaching out. You cannot do this one off. It'll drive you mad. So break it down individual by individual, give them the running list, and then add this to your master list, whether you're working in like a CRM, Google Sheets, whatever. That's going to be the best way to prioritize.
We did this at Pave where if every day one of my reps asked for an intro to one target account, I probably would have been fired as a VP of sales. But once a month, or when it got really hot, once every 2 weeks, we would have a list, and it was called Find a Way In. And it was the list of 25 accounts where we needed to find a way in. And we would get Matt and all of our key executives in a room, and we would have columns for every single one of their names. We'd be like, do you have a way in? And they would all go look at their first, second, third degree connections for all the prospects on Stripe, for example. And then once per quarter, we would pick an investor. So for example, Andreessen Horowitz was really well involved with us. And we would go through all of Andreessen's portfolio companies, and we'd be like, hey, Q1 this year, can A16Z get us in front of their top 25 portfolio companies that fit our ICP? Here's who we have to get in front of. And you'll be amazed how much your investors want you to win so that they can make money, especially if you're at a small company. If you can get access to those folks, I know it's harder if you're at a Salesforce or an Oracle, but if you can get access to those early stage investors or use your VP of sales to get access to those people, you can generate a lot of warm pipeline through it.
Intros are an interesting topic in general. And I found, like you, Kelvin, when you batch them together and thoughtfully do it, and you get everything like, hey, listen, investors, just want to let you know, first week of the month, that's when we come and ask for our intros. I think everybody's mentally prepared. You get a lot more follow through. People are in that kind of like mode of doing it, and that's fine. But when reps kind of go like, oh, I need this now. I need this now. Oh, tomorrow I need this. 3 days from now I need this. It just is too disruptive, and it doesn't feel thoughtful. And the main thing that somebody giving an intro wants is, how can I feel thoughtful? What is the reasoning behind this other than, hey, this company just wants to be an introduction to sell you something, right? We all have had deals where we've had emergencies at the end, and we've had to really like call in the big guns to get things done. And I'm not saying that that's not appropriate, but I think that if as a sales leader, you can get organized and ahead of things enough to know, here's the week of the month or the quarter that we're going to do intros, and you better be ready. After that, I think that it ramps the effectiveness significantly when you do that.
Kelvin, I'm curious. My guess is you're not literally just scrolling through all of their Gong recordings and reading the transcripts and randomly coaching. If I want to start figuring out ways to get a little bit smart about using my call recording platform, what are one or two things that I can start with right away?
Most call recordings are going to have breakdowns of how well your team performed. The one thing I would start at is like, where's the biggest gap in process? I think usually when you talk to a sales leader and they're talking about their reps, it's either we're not getting to power, we're too low level, we don't have enough stakeholders involved, we don't have enough engagement in between meetings. All of these call recording softwares are going to tell you all of this information. Going into a new month or going into a pipe review, I might review the stats for a particular rep. And if I see that they are 40% win rate when they have a C-level engaged and 4 stakeholders, I'm saying, wow, that's tremendous. And then I'm seeing the same stat that says, but this is only happening in 5% of the deals. That is a red flag. So I am immediately understanding the area of opportunity for this rep is to get stakeholders involved. So there goes the sales plays, right? The executive touches right after the disco, the going wide to key stakeholders, the references, everything we've already talked about. On the flip side, you might find that your rep only has a handful of contacts. You might see your win rate go from 15% to 30% when you go from 2 contacts involved to 3 contacts or 4 contacts. And when you start to see reps that don't get enough contacts engaged, again, you're probably thinking, what are we doing early in the deal to not get enough value where they want to bring other people in? That's where I'm starting to focus in. Gong also opens up the door for you to quickly understand how you can multi-thread effectively. My number one play with Gong is if I'm listening to a call or helping a rep prep for a demo after a call, let's go to the last call we had. They had 3 or 4 stakeholders on the call. And what Gong allows you to do is through their AI or any call recording course, Fathom that you have, is look at what questions were asked by the other team. And so it can start to pick that up. And what you can quickly do is get a running transcript of the 8 to 10 questions that were asked by the other team. You can then bucket those up by individual. So the VP of Ops asked these 3 specific questions. The IC or the CSM asked these 2, and the VP of CS asked this specific one. Now what you need to do with that, this is your homework in between calls. You send your demo recap or your call recap, and then you go individually the next day. And you say, hey, Mark, you asked a couple questions around how is this going to integrate with your tech stack? We didn't fully dive into it. Here's a couple of resources we have, or here's a quick video of exactly how this will work for you. Looking forward to connecting with your team next week. Let me know what you need in the meantime. And what you're doing by this is you're getting value to individuals, but you're also creating influencers at every step. Everyone talks about the importance of a champion, but you need multiple people singing your praises. And if you can do these little steps in between the meetings, you're going to stand out against the other reps that you're competing against for that business. Don't try and listen to an hour call when you can just comb through the transcript. You can use a lot of the AI in these call recording softwares to flag key competitors, flag risk, flag key things that your team wants to look for, and automatically upload these into libraries. That way you can quickly identify them as a manager of where to focus. Don't listen to a call straight up and sit through an hour to understand gaps. Use the data to understand really quickly what's happening with individual reps. Go back to those specific calls at that specific stage, and then understand what we can be doing better on those calls together.
Dude, amazing show. We have to end with the final question, and it is this. We talked about a lot of good habits when it comes to coaching, helping your reps accelerate deals, using Gong, all other types of things, but it's time to talk about a bad habit. So if there were one bad coaching habit that every manager should break so that all sales teams get a little bit better, what would it be?
A lot of people say they like direct feedback, and I think we kind of take that the wrong way to kind of just give feedback straight up. And I don't like the sandwich, give positive, bad, positive. Most times as managers, we don't consistently give great feedback. And I think this isn't just for reps. I think this is for people in product, people in CS. If I can encourage anybody is praise the small wins, right? When product ships something small, pump it up, send emojis, say, this is incredible work. When your sales rep does a small thing, they book that next step because they've been struggling with it. They found a new connection that they did through a play. Pump it up with them individually, showcase it to the greater team. Oftentimes we're so quick to point out the negative. Hey, you missed this. You need to do this better versus the small wins that are going to get them to make those habits. Being in a remote environment, sometimes we're really just trying to go after the key things they're missing instead of focusing on all the small wins that they're doing in between. So do not miss out on opportunities to praise your team, whether it's your individual sales reps, but more importantly, the other departments, because in sales, we are nothing without product, our customer success, our marketing. Any of the small wins, shifts that they produce, make sure you're giving them love and make sure they feel heard and recognized for what they're doing for you.
That's the truth, man. Amazing show. Everyone hang on for a 60-second recap coming up soon. Alrighty, Mark, it's time for a 2x2 recap from this episode with Kelvin Sims. What do you have for your 2?
Number 1 is if you don't have an intentional, strong reference policy, then who knows what's going to happen. It's all going to be one-off, weird, and you're going to start to have customers pissed off because they're constantly having to do reference calls or being asked to. So get intentional with your reference call policy. And then secondly is everybody has a process of what reps need to do for the next step. And everybody also has a lot of training around what to do in a meeting. Have you thought about what to do in between meetings? That's where sometimes the real selling and the real stuff happens. So when I'm looking at my sales process, I'm already questioning, do I have enough guidance of what happens when you're not in a meeting that can move a deal forward?
Number 3, take the 25 discovery calls that your reps have this week, plop them into a spreadsheet, throw it into Sales Nav, and identify referral opportunities with your leadership, your co-founders, your investors, and previous customers. And then lastly, number 4, based on what you find, if you have a really strong introduction, for example, an exec intro, you might go all in and try to bridge that intro right away. Or if it's a slightly weaker one, you might just give it to your rep so that they can build some rapport. Alrighty, folks, if you like this one, on the note of building rapport, I recently wrote a newsletter on how to nail the first 90 seconds of a discovery call, which is all about building rapport and bringing up some of these proof points, including mutual connections, in the first 90 seconds of a discovery call. So you can go check that out in the show notes and catch us on the next leadership show. Alrighty, peace.